Hey there, welcome to Learning Labs. Today we're in chapter 3. We're talking about weather patterns and climate. Specifically, we're on 3.7, which is all about air masses and fronts. Let's get right into it. So, how do air masses affect weather? What the heck is an air mass? Let's take a look at it. Weather maps, which we'll see in a bit, show that cities across a large region can share the same weather. Yeah, that makes sense, right? And then in the same area, they should have the same weather. Some cities have cool, clear weather. The air throughout the region is cool and dry. However, other cities may have warmer, cloudier weather. The air throughout the region is warm and moist. A large region of the atmosphere where the air has similar properties is called an air mass. Air masses are named for the region they come from. And that makes a lot of sense. If it's warm over there and the air mass is warm, we should call it something from maybe about warm, right? Let's take a look at the names. As the air masses move from one region to the next, they bring the conditions with them. What happens if a cool, moist air mass moves over an area that has warm and dry weather? The warm, dry weather will change. Instead of mixing, there's a narrow boundary that forms in between them. This boundary is called a front, okay? Why is it called a front? Because it's a front of the blanket, essentially. Very easy. So, sister has warm front coming up here. I have the cold front. They meet here. They don't mix. They just meet. Thin boundary right there. The weather changes rapidly at the fronts, okay? Because you're passing from one kind of air mass into another, the fronts often cause rainy and unsettled weather patterns. So take a look at this diagram here. These are some types of air masses. Let's start top left here. We have maritime polar, which is like cool and moist because it's coming from the north, moving south. If we look at the south, we have maritime tropical, obviously because it's from the tropics, nice and warm. And then we have continental tropical, so it's on land. Maritime means water, by the way, like coastal. Continental is on the continent, so nice and hot on the land. You got maritime tropical, okay, from the south, near the water, easy. Maritime polar, coming from the poles, it's gotta be cold. And continental polar, also gotta be cold, also on land. This is all about weather fronts. This is what it looks like in a diagram. I love this diagram, it looks super cool. Here's my cold blanket on the left. Cold air swooping in, right? You have your sister's warm blanket right here on the right side with the red, okay? The cold air comes in, and remember from our last lesson, it's dense, okay? So it goes underneath. The warm air goes up on top. And the front they meet like that, they don't mix. The warm air goes on top, cold air goes over, and eventually the warm air will cool down and then drop on the other side. Okay? See the cloud there? That's because cloud formation, right? You've read this on the last chapter where warm air rises, it cools down and becomes clouds. How do fronts affect weather? In a cold front, cold air moves in under the warm air mass, like how we talked about before in that example. The cold front brings brief, heavy storms. There may be thunderstorms and strong winds. After the storm, and the skies are usually clearer and the weather is usually cooler and drier. The reason why the cold fronts brings heavy storms is, as you saw in that last diagram, the warm air rises and creates cumulonimbus clouds usually. And the cold, dense air comes in. And so the cloud is left there and it starts to pour rain and thunderstorm and such. Okay? Now check out this, the warm front. The warm front air moves over the cold air mass and it usually brings light, steady rain or snow. The precipitation may last for days. Usually the winds are light. The warm fronts may also bring some type of fog stratus clouds that form near the ground. That's just the movement of condensation. because the cold air is leaving. And afterward, the weather is usually warmer and more humid. So looking at these diagrams here, the cold front on top, we have the colder, denser air moving in under the warm air front. Yeah, the warm air is on top. That movement this way and up with the hot air creates the clouds, the heavy clouds. Okay, if you look at down here, you got the warm front. The warm air goes on top of the cold air and rises up, and there you go. All right, so link below the video is our lesson links where you can practice a little bit on air masses and what it is to be a front and what weather that type of brings. A little bit of extending your knowledge there. Otherwise, next chapter, we're on 3.8, which is all about severe storms.